Imagine being thrown out of a restaurant, not because you did anything wrong but because of the color of your skin. That's exactly what happened to Marcus and Danielle Harris, a black couple humiliated in front of strangers. But what the restaurant owner didn't know was who they really were. And when the truth came out, his entire world collapsed.
It was supposed to be a quiet night out. Marcus and Danielle Harris, a married black couple in their early 40s, had been working tirelessly all week. Marcus in his law office, Danielle at the hospital. They had finally carved out an evening for themselves, away from the chaos of work and the weight of responsibilities. They chose a small, upscale restaurant in town, one that had a reputation for exclusivity. The kind of place where soft jazz floated in the background and every plate was served like art. When they walked through the heavy wooden doors, Marcus placed a gentle hand on Danielle's back. She looked radiant, dressed in a simple but elegant black dress, her natural curls framing her face. Marcus, in a charcoal blazer, looked every bit the professional. They weren't flashy. They weren't loud. They were just a couple looking to enjoy dinner together. But from the moment they stepped in, Marcus noticed the shift. Conversations around them didn't stop, but the subtle glances from certain tables, the quick whispers, the way the hostess's smile faltered before forcing cheer back onto her face, it all spoke volumes. "Good evening," Marcus said warmly to the hostess. "Table for two, under Harris." The hostess checked her book, hesitated, then nodded. "Right this way." They followed her through the dining room. Eyes trailed them. Not everyone, but enough to make Danielle shift uncomfortably. They were seated near the back, close to the kitchen doors where waiters rushed in and out. Danielle noticed empty tables and better spots, with white couples being seated there instead. She didn't say anything, just gave Marcus a knowing glance. He took her hand under the table, squeezing gently, silently telling her, "I see it too." Their waiter arrived, polite but curt. No smile, no warmth, just a flat recitation of the specials. Danielle ordered salmon. Marcus asked for steak. When Marcus requested a bottle of red wine, the waiter raised an eyebrow, almost as if questioning whether they could afford it. He didn't say it aloud, but the message was clear. By the time their food arrived, Danielle's unease had grown. The portions on their plates were noticeably smaller than what she had seen being served at other tables. Their wine glasses were poured shallow, while across the room, others had generous servings. "Marcus," Danielle whispered, leaning closer. "They're treating us differently." "I know," Marcus said, keeping his voice even. "Let's just get through dinner. Don't let them ruin this for us." But as if the night was determined to prove them wrong, things escalated. Halfway through the meal, the restaurant owner himself approached their table. A tall, stocky man in a pressed white shirt and gold cufflinks. His expression was hard and unwelcoming. He didn't bother to smile. "I'm going to have to ask you two to leave," the owner said bluntly, his voice carrying loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Danielle froze. "Excuse me?" "This establishment has standards," the owner continued, his eyes narrowing. "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone who doesn't meet them. You've made some of our regular guests uncomfortable." The words struck like a slap. Danielle's mouth fell open in disbelief. Marcus's jaw clenched. Around them, whispers rose. Phones lifted subtly as diners began to record. Danielle found her voice, trembling but firm. "We've done nothing wrong. We came here to enjoy a meal, just like everyone else." The owner crossed his arms. "You don't belong here. Finish up quickly, or leave now." Marcus pushed back his chair, standing tall. His voice was calm, but the controlled anger beneath it vibrated through the air. "We're paying customers. We've been nothing but respectful. You're humiliating my wife in front of strangers for no reason other than your prejudice." The owner smirked. "Call it whatever you like. My restaurant. My rules." Gasps rippled through the room. Danielle's heart pounded. She could feel every eye in the restaurant drilling into them, some sympathetic, some judgmental, all captivated. Marcus placed a protective arm around Danielle's shoulders. He leaned closer to her ear. "It's okay. We'll leave." But he has no idea who he just messed with. Danielle looked up at him, confused. Marcus's tone wasn't bitter. It was certain, almost promising. The owner, still smug, waved them off. "That's right. Walk out. This place isn't for people like you." The crowd's whispers grew louder. Some phones were now clearly recording. The story was no longer confined to this restaurant. It was already being documented, prepared to live far beyond these four walls. And as Marcus and Danielle stood, gathering their things with quiet dignity, the restaurant owner had no idea that the couple he had just kicked out were not only respected in their community, but connected in ways that would turn this entire night upside down. Because Marcus wasn't just any man, and Danielle wasn't just any woman. And soon, the world would know exactly who they were.
The restaurant had fallen into an uneasy hush, the kind of silence that buzzes with unspoken tension. Marcus and Danielle stood near their table, his arm protectively around her, while the owner stood rigid, arms crossed, his face set in stone. But if the owner thought his cruelty would be swept under the rug, he was mistaken. Because in 2025, injustice doesn't vanish, it gets recorded. All around the room, diners shifted in their seats. Some stared openly, their expressions a mixture of discomfort and disbelief. Others angled their phones discreetly, cameras glowing faintly as they captured the confrontation. A few whispered loudly enough for the couple to hear. "This is outrageous. Why is he throwing them out? They didn't do anything." Danielle felt heat rise in her chest, not just from embarrassment but from anger. Her hands shook slightly as she clutched her handbag. She whispered to Marcus, "Everyone's watching. They'll believe him over us." But Marcus's eyes were calm, steady. "Not this time," he murmured. The owner raised his voice deliberately, trying to take control of the narrative. "Folks, I apologize for the disturbance. We value your experience here, and unfortunately, some people don't respect the standards of this establishment. We're simply maintaining order." He said it loud enough to make sure the entire dining room heard. His tone dripped with condescension, his words carefully chosen to paint Marcus and Danielle as the problem. Danielle's chest tightened. She wanted to scream, to defend herself, to tell the truth. But Marcus placed a firm hand on her shoulder. His eyes said it all. "Wait. Patience." And then, something unexpected happened. From a corner booth, a young woman stood up. She was white, mid-20s, with a phone clutched tightly in her hand. Her voice trembled, but it carried. "That's not what happened. I recorded everything. They didn't do a thing wrong. You're just targeting them." The room gasped. The owner's face darkened. "Sit down," he barked. But the young woman didn't. Instead, she raised her phone higher as if daring him. "No. People should see this." Another diner chimed in, an older black man with salt and pepper hair. "She's right. I've been coming here for years and I've never seen a couple treated this way. You're out of line." The tension snapped. Suddenly, more voices filled the room. "This isn't right. You're embarrassing yourself. They deserve an apology." The owner's eyes darted around, his authority slipping through his fingers like sand. He slammed a hand against the back of a chair. "Enough. This is my restaurant, and I won't have my reputation destroyed by..." He stopped himself mid-sentence, but the damage was already done. His words hung in the air, ugly and exposed. He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what he meant. Marcus finally stepped forward, his voice steady, controlled, and commanding. "Your reputation isn't being destroyed by us. It's being destroyed by you. Every phone in this room is capturing your prejudice in real time. You're not just humiliating us, you're humiliating yourself." The crowd murmured in agreement. Phones tilted upward, ensuring every angle was covered. Danielle felt her heart racing. She had wanted to disappear moments ago, but now something inside her shifted. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a witness to the truth unfolding. And the truth was on their side. The owner sputtered, his face red with fury. "You think anyone cares about your little videos? You think this will matter tomorrow? I've run this restaurant for 20 years. People know me. They'll believe me, not you." Marcus tilted his head slightly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You're right about one thing. People do know us. And soon you'll find out exactly who we are. But I promise you this, you will regret tonight. The words sent a ripple of electricity through the room. Danielle lifted her chin. For the first time that evening, she let herself speak with conviction, her voice steady and strong. We came here in good faith. We wanted nothing more than to enjoy a meal. You chose to humiliate us. You chose to make us small. But you're going to learn something very important tonight. We are not small people. The restaurant fell silent again, but it wasn't the heavy silence from before. This one was sharp, charged, alive with anticipation. The diners knew they were witnessing something bigger than dinner. This was a moment of truth. The owner, red-faced and sputtering, had lost control of his room. The couple he thought he could dismiss like an inconvenience now stood taller than ever, backed by the weight of witnesses and the cold truth of cameras. And outside these walls, the world was waiting. The restaurant was vibrating with tension, every pair of eyes locked on Marcus and Danielle. The smug arrogance that once oozed from the owner's posture had started to crack, though he was still clinging to his authority like a lifeline. He jabbed a finger at Marcus. Enough of this. You're wasting my time and everyone else's. Get out before I call the police. The crowd bristled at his words. Someone shouted, "Why? They didn't do anything wrong." Another diner added, "You should be ashamed of yourself." Phones were still raised, capturing every insult, every threat, every ounce of his prejudice. But Marcus didn't flinch. His deep brown eyes locked onto the owner's, and when he finally spoke, his words carried such authority that even the clatter from the kitchen seemed to still. "Go ahead," Marcus said evenly. "Call the police. In fact, I'd encourage it. Because when they arrive, they'll be reporting to me." The owner blinked, caught off guard. "What are you talking about?" Danielle's lips curved into the faintest smile, her hand slipping into Marcus's. She had been quiet for much of the ordeal, enduring the humiliation, but now she stood taller, her chin high, radiating strength. Marcus took a deliberate step forward, his voice carrying across the restaurant. "My name is Marcus Harris, Federal District Judge. And this woman you've tried to humiliate, my wife, Dr. Danielle Harris, is the Chief of Medicine at Crestview Hospital. We don't just serve this community. We help shape it." The restaurant erupted in gasps. Diners exchanged wide-eyed looks. Several lowered their phones just enough to whisper in disbelief. "Wait, he's a judge? She's the head of the hospital? Oh my God, this is going to blow up." The owner's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. His bravado evaporated instantly, replaced by the dawning horror of what he had just done. Marcus didn't raise his voice, but the quiet strength in his words carried more power than any shout. "You thought you could shame us because of the color of our skin. You assumed we were beneath you, that you could toss us out like trash. But you miscalculated. You didn't just insult two customers. You insulted a judge of the United States and the woman responsible for saving hundreds of lives in this very community." Danielle stepped forward then, her voice steady, clear, and cutting. "Do you know how many people I treat every day regardless of their race, their status, their wealth? I've saved the lives of children whose parents can't afford health insurance. I've operated on men and women who would never set foot in a restaurant like this. And I never once asked whether they belonged. Because human dignity isn't something you decide. It's something every person deserves." The crowd burst into spontaneous applause. Diners stood, clapping loudly, their support pouring out like a tidal wave. Even those who had been silent earlier now found their courage. Phones zoomed in closer, capturing the stunned look on the owner's face and the regal composure of the couple he had tried to belittle. The owner tried to salvage the moment, stammering, "Judge Harris, Dr. Harris, I didn't realize. I had no idea who you were." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "That's the point. You didn't care who we were. You didn't see us as people. You saw us as stereotypes. You thought you could strip away our dignity with a few cruel words. And you're only apologizing now because you've been exposed." The man's face turned crimson. Sweat gathered on his forehead as he shifted uncomfortably under the piercing weight of Marcus's words, and the judgmental stares of his paying customers. Danielle folded her arms, her voice sharp as glass. "The question isn't who we are. The question is, would you have treated us differently if we weren't?" The silence that followed was louder than any applause. The owner couldn't answer. He just stood there, trapped in his own prejudice, choking on the truth. A diner from the back called out, "That's it. We're leaving. You'll never see another dollar from us." Others quickly followed, gathering their coats and bags. A ripple effect began, people walking out, one after another, their voices echoing their disapproval. "You lost my business. Shame on you. This is going on social media tonight. The owner's shoulders slumped. His empire of exclusivity was crumbling in real time, right in front of him. Marcus turned back to Danielle, his expression softening. "Are you ready to go?" She nodded, but before they left, she looked back at the owner one last time. Her eyes were steady, her words calm but searing. "The harm you tried to cause us will follow you now. Not because of who we are, but because of who you chose to be tonight. Remember that." The couple walked out together, hand in hand, their presence regal, their dignity intact. Behind them, the restaurant buzzed with chaos. Angry customers, buzzing phones, and a broken man realizing his mistake too late. But outside, in the cool night air, Marcus and Danielle breathed freely again. The humiliation had been real, but so was the vindication. They hadn't just endured. They had triumphed. And the world was about to hear their story.
By the time Marcus and Danielle stepped out into the cool night air, the restaurant behind them had become a storm. Voices rose, chairs scraped against the polished floor, and the once proud hum of polite conversation had been replaced by outrage and indignation. Inside, the owner was scrambling to salvage control. But the truth was, control had already slipped through his fingers the moment the first phone began recording. Diners who had been silent witnesses were now emboldened by Marcus's revelation. Some marched straight to the front desk, demanding refunds. Others raised their phones even higher, narrating to their audiences what had just unfolded. "Y'all won't believe this. A black couple just got kicked out for no reason. And the guy turned out to be a federal judge. This place is done. This is Crestview's fanciest restaurant, but tonight they showed their true colors. Racism on display. I got it all on video. Share this. People need to see." Within minutes, clips were flying onto social media. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, it didn't matter. The story had wings. Hashtags appeared almost instantly. Hashtag Justice for the Harrises. Hashtag Dining While Black. Hashtag Crestview Restaurant Scandal. The comments rolled in fast. "This is disgusting. Imagine humiliating someone like that." Of course he backed down, once he realized who they were. "That restaurant needs to be shut down." Salute to Judge Harris and Dr. Danielle Harris for standing tall. By the time Marcus and Danielle reached their car, their phones were buzzing with notifications. Friends, colleagues, and even strangers were messaging them. "Are you okay? We saw the video. This is going viral. We stand with you." Danielle sat in the passenger seat, her chest still tight from the ordeal, but she scrolled through the flood of support and felt tears prick her eyes. "Marcus," she whispered, showing him her screen, "look at this. People are already standing up for us." Marcus glanced at the phone, his lips curving into a small, proud smile. "Good. That means tonight wasn't just about us. It was about everyone who's ever been treated like less." Back inside the restaurant, chaos reigned. The owner barked orders at his staff, demanding they escort the remaining diners out, but his words fell flat. His servers exchanged uneasy glances, some outright refusing. One of them, a young black waiter, finally dropped his apron and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I won't work for a man who humiliates people like that. I quit." The crowd cheered. Someone else shouted, "You'll be on the news tomorrow." Another voice followed, and not in a good way. By closing time, the once exclusive establishment was nearly empty, abandoned by its loyal regulars, and staffed only by those too afraid to walk out. The owner sat in his office, head in his hands, as his phone buzzed with messages from business partners and friends. None of them were kind. "What did you do? Your name is all over social media. Do you have any idea who you just insulted?" News outlets began sniffing around within hours. Local journalists reached out, eager to cover the scandal. Online blogs ran headlines before the night was even over. Racist restaurant owner confronts black couple, learns they're a judge and doctor. Crestview's most exclusive restaurant under fire for discrimination. Judge Harris responds to humiliation in viral video. The story spread like wildfire. And with every share, every retweet, every repost, the owner's carefully cultivated image of prestige crumbled further. Meanwhile, Marcus and Danielle sat quietly at home. Danielle, curled against Marcus on the couch, was still processing everything. "I never thought dinner could turn into this," she admitted softly. Marcus stroked her hand gently. "It's not just dinner. It's a mirror." That man held it up to himself tonight, and the world saw who he really is. Danielle nodded slowly. "Do you think it will make a difference?" Marcus's gaze was steady, his voice certain. "Yes, because people are tired of pretending this doesn't happen. Tonight, they saw it for themselves. And tomorrow, they'll talk about it. That's how change begins, one moment at a time." And he was right, because by morning, the story wasn't just local news. It was national. Clips of the confrontation played on TV, the Harris's names trending across platforms. Commentators weighed in, activists amplified the story, and community leaders rallied around them. The restaurant owner, once a man admired for his wealth and connections, was now infamous for his prejudice. His name was etched into headlines not for his cuisine, but for his cruelty. And all the while, Marcus and Danielle didn't need to say much more. Their dignity, their restraint, their truth, it all spoke louder than any press conference ever could.
By sunrise the next morning, the scandal was everywhere. Headlines blazed across news sites, hashtags dominated timelines, and videos of the confrontation had already gathered millions of views. For Marcus and Danielle, the night had ended quietly in their own living room, away from the flashing lights of social media. Yet as they sipped coffee in the soft morning light, they both knew their lives would not be the same. Danielle scrolled through her phone, her screen filled with messages. Strangers from across the country were reaching out. Mothers, fathers, students, even doctors and lawyers, sharing their own stories of humiliation, their own scars from prejudice. "Marcus," she said softly, holding up her phone, "listen to this. Thank you for standing tall. Watching you gave me hope." Marcus looked at her, his expression tender. "That's why this happened. Not just for us but for all of them." By noon, reporters gathered outside their home, cameras clicking, microphones raised. But Marcus refused to play into the spectacle. Instead, he released a single statement. "My wife and I did not seek this confrontation, but we will not shy away from it. What happened to us last night is not new. It happens every day to people whose names are not known, whose stories are not recorded. We stand with them. We demand better, from our businesses, our neighbors, and ourselves. Dignity is not negotiable. Respect is not optional. And silence in the face of injustice is not acceptable." The statement went viral, shared not only by news outlets but by everyday people who felt seen by his words. Danielle, too, wrote her own message, one that spread quickly through the medical community. "I've dedicated my life to healing. I will never turn away a patient because of their background. I ask that we, as a society, stop turning away people in every other way. Racism is not just unkind, it is deadly. And it has no place in our communities." The response was overwhelming. Leaders in both law and medicine reached out in solidarity. The restaurant, once the jewel of Crestview, found itself abandoned overnight. Reservation lines went dead. Food suppliers cut ties. Staff quit in droves. Within weeks, the once glamorous establishment was forced to close its doors permanently. The owner tried to issue an apology, a desperate attempt to save face. But by then it was too late. His name was already synonymous with prejudice, his empire undone by his own arrogance. For Marcus and Danielle, though, the closure of the restaurant wasn't the victory. The real victory was the wave of conversations it sparked. Churches held forums. Schools discussed the incident in classrooms. Community groups gathered to talk about discrimination, dignity, and change. The Harris's had become symbols, not because they wanted fame but because they refused to bow their heads. One evening, weeks later, Marcus and Danielle returned to Crestview's town square. The restaurant's building stood dark and empty, a for lease sign hanging where a glowing logo once shimmered. Danielle stopped and looked at it for a long moment. "Do you ever feel bad?" she asked quietly. "For what happened to him?" Marcus slipped an arm around her shoulders, his voice calm but firm. "No. He chose his actions. He chose his words. Actions have consequences. We didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself." Danielle leaned into him, her heart heavy yet hopeful. Do you think people will really change? Marcus tilted his head, watching the evening sun dip low on the horizon. Change doesn't happen overnight. But moments like this, stories like ours, they light a fire. And if that fire keeps burning, then yes, people will change. They stood there in silence, hand in hand, their figures outlined by the fading light. To anyone passing by, they looked like just another couple. But to those who knew, to those who remembered, they were a symbol. A reminder that dignity cannot be taken, only surrendered, and they had refused to surrender. And in that refusal, they had given courage to countless others. The restaurant may have closed, but the lesson remained. Long after the lights went out, Marcus and Danielle's story lived on, whispered in classrooms, preached in churches, debated online, and etched into the minds of everyone who had seen it unfold. Because sometimes, justice doesn't happen in a courtroom or a hospital. Sometimes, it happens in a restaurant on an ordinary night, when ordinary people stand tall. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything.